This is John Paul II writing in Familiaris Consortio, Consortium of Family. This totality of devotion one to another, which is required by conjugal love. Remember how conjugal love rises up as a category in Casti Connubii. Now it's part of John Paul II's regular analysis of matrimony. This totality, which is required by conjugal love, also corresponds to the demands of responsible fertility. Thus, John Paul first describes marriage, without mentioning parenthood, as one way of realizing the general human vocation to love. Next, he emphasizes the totality of self-giving required by conjugal love, and then he points out that this totality is itself completed by the procreation and raising of children. This development of church teaching concerning marriage received legal force, as we've already seen, in the 1983 Code of Canon Law. The 1917 Code's statement of the primary and secondary ends no longer appears. In its place, the 1983 Code is the first section of the first of the canons on marriage, and it reads as we saw before. The matrimonial covenant by which a man and a woman establish between themselves a partnership of the whole of life is by its nature ordered toward the good of the spouses and the procreation and education of offspring. The and there is not as an afterthought. It's not in addition to. It means the same order which perfects conjugal love results, all things being equal, in offspring. And offspring fulfill the matrimonial bond. This covenant between baptized persons, the canon concludes, has been raised by Christ the Lord to the dignity of a sacrament. Now, this little tour, and that's what it is, a little tour, is intended to remind us where we stand. Where we stand. We stand in an analysis. We stand in an understanding. We stand in a tradition which has come to the point of saying the conjugal relation between husband and wife is one of the principal modes of human flourishing in this world for the sake of the next and for the sake of the good, the common good of the entire human race. That's where we stand. People who wish to snipe at that understanding by saying, but some people are left out. Or the law shouldn't be recognizing these metaphysical notions, right? These people are not inviting us to a conversation. They are inviting us to forget where we stand. We must not do so. I hope you will join us for the remainder of the lectures in this series and give our other speakers, better speakers I might add, a chance to remind you of where the ground goes, just what kind of rock on which we stand. Thank you for your attention. Now, I quite realize that I didn't do great justice to Robbie George's article. If people have questions about it, I'll be happy to engage them. And I want to say, to emphasize what I said at the beginning, here I was following, in this presentation, I was following very closely, quoting in some cases, the exposition of Germain Grisey. How many people know that name? Oh, good. That's good. This is a great moral theologian, Germain Grisey. Those of us who were trained in Aristotelotomism have a little quarrel with him on a few things. But by and large, he's on the right team. And he has published, as you may know, a work called The Way of the Lord Jesus. It's an attempt at a comprehensive moral theology post-Vatican II. He's classically trained in Thomism. He's classically trained in Aristotle and in philosophy. Right? He just retired from his long-time assignment writing this work at Mount St. Mary's of Emmitsburg in Maryland in June of this last year, June of 2009. And when they asked him, when the university asked him, what would you like as a gift for your retirement? He said, I would like you to make The Way of the Lord Jesus available for free on the internet. And that's where it is. It's on the internet. So take this down. You can get to it by thinking of the way of the Lord Jesus. TWOTLJ.org. TWOTLJ.org. It has a number of advantages. For those of you who may be interested in technical matters of moral theology, it's extraordinarily well documented. It's extraordinarily well documented. But with the help of his longtime collaborator, Russell Shaw, who writes for our Sunday Visitor, Grisey has written the main text in a way to be extremely accessible. You do not have to be a trained moral theologian to follow the arguments and grasp where they're going. Now, it's an enormously useful piece of work, and I encourage you to take a look at it. The third, there eventually will be 4 volumes. The third is now up. It's called Difficult Moral Questions. And Grisey has collected 182. He keeps adding to them. He's collected 182 difficult moral questions. For each of them, he gives a full analysis. So just last night, every now and then I go to it and look for an interesting one. Just last night he was saying, can a college professor cooperate in offering courses that he knows to be false? Okay? Mass. That's the organ. All right, so there are 182 difficult moral questions. You can get a full analysis of them. First volume is on the bases of Catholic moral theology. Second volume is on the way of Christian life, dealing with the sacraments, moral virtues, natural law, and the law of the gospel. So it's really worth looking at. In case you hadn't noticed, I strongly recommend it to you. So, I'm open to questions. If there are questions, I'll be happy to take them. Yes, Lynn?
How do infertile couples,
Stand up.
how does all this teaching affect infertile couples?
Only insofar as it includes them. Look, the infertile couples are, the question was, how does this teaching affect, A-F-F-E-C-T, infertile couples? Answer, it includes them. That is to say, couples who discover that for them the marital act is infertile, nevertheless undertake the behavior characteristic of the species for reproduction. They unite. They unite. So the teaching of the church has never taught that infertility was a ground for annulment, nor is infertility, even if it's known prior to marriage, is infertility an impediment to marriage. That's why old people can get married after the death of a spouse, or not having found a spouse until late in life. The church has never taught against the real conjugal union in matrimony of infertile couples. Never. Non-consummation is grounds for annulment. That,
Yeah.
do you want to follow that up?
Well, I was just wondering how opponents would use infertile couples.
Oh, that's been tried.
This argument.
Sure. Well, it's been tried. What they say is, I mean, have you read Robbie's article? You'll find that question directly addressed, of course. Here's the argument as it's often given by opponents of traditional marriage. First off, they take it that the church teaches that marriage is not an intrinsic good, that conjugal love and union is not good in itself. It's only good so far as it subserves the further end of procreation. That's the first thing. That's false. The church doesn't teach that, but they make that argument. They use that as a premise. Next premise is, but therefore then, when infertile couples deliberately engage in sexual relations, they are no different than gay couples, right? Insofar as they're merely infertile, right? And insofar as sexual relations are merely the use of the body by the will and spirit, They may be used in various ways, right? As tokens of affection. The use of the body may be as a token of affection, for procreation, for recreation, for weight control. Take it any way you want.